Mel Kiper Jr., you silly little man.
You're wasting your time yelling and screaming at me, guys. Everybody out there is going to be typing in their little comments. I'm not gonna read them. I'm not gonna see them.
This year, he started early, already espousing some extremely bold opinions about this year's crop of prospects. Here's a look at 10 of them that he's already given us regarding the 2022 draft class. We may as well begin at the top of the draft, where Kiper has already crowned Aiden Hutchinson as the surefire #1 pick.
Who makes everybody around him better? Aiden Hutchinson could be that guy. I think it's pretty much an easy consensus that he should be the pick at #1.
And he doesn't just think he's going to go #1 overall. Kiper is already proclaiming that he's ready to be a double-digit sack guy as a rookie. Hutchinson, my top-ranked prospect in this class, could get double-digit sacks playing on the other side of Josh Allen in new coordinator Mike Caldwell's defense. Now, this isn't meant to besmirch Hutchinson, who, to his credit, looked very dominant all year at the University of Michigan, and should translate to a successful pro. In fact, he may even end up notching double-digit sacks as a rookie like Mel predicted. I'm just not completely convinced that he's such a lock to go #1 overall this year, particularly because of which NFL cellar dweller is slotted to pick in that spot. I recognize that the Jacksonville Jaguars, the aforementioned cellar dweller, have a ton of holes, and edge rusher is certainly one of them. The need has been slightly lessened with some of the moves the Jags have made in free agency, but when you have a potential generational talent on the O-line and a young quarterback you need to protect, I think you have to at least consider filling that need, instead of maybe taking a defensive end like Kiper has all but guaranteed. While we're chatting about potential top 10 picks, let's journey over to the New York Jets war room, where Kiper has claimed that he sees the Jets brass, who have 2 top 10 picks this year, using their 4th overall pick on a wide receiver, more specifically USC's Drake London.
Mel, why Drake London at pick 4?
You go for a guy that brings something they don't have, is that great length, that catch radius, the ability to win contested situations.
This probably comes as a bit of a surprise to anyone who followed along with Kiper's pre-combine mock, in which he thought the Jets would be after Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton. Another somewhat crazy prediction, considering the Jets' history of taking safeties that high in the draft. But I digress, because the notion that the Jets might take London is sort of frightening. There hasn't been a wide receiver taken in the top 4 of a draft since Amari Cooper in 2015. And while Cooper has been a good pro, it's safe to say he hasn't exactly proved worthy of that price tag. And even if the 6'4", 220-pound London has success in the NFL, if he doesn't turn into the next Calvin Johnson, it'll be hard to justify having taken him that high in the draft. We have routinely seen teams turn mid to late first-round picks and even second and third rounders into star wide receivers. Justin Jefferson at 22 overall, DK Metcalf at the end of the 2nd round. There are just a lot of examples. Never mind the fact that the Jets have already put a pretty solid receiving core around young quarterback Zach Wilson. Elijah Moore showed star potential last year. Corey Davis fills that big physical receiver role, and with the addition of CJ Uzomah at tight end, they have the potential for a great passing attack this year, even without Drake London. Staying in New York and talking top 10 picks, Kiper has some pie-in-the-sky-like ambition for the Giants' 2022 draft class, predicting the G-Men will turn their number 5 and 7 overall picks into Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau, both of whom are considered by many to be top 3 talents in this year's draft. Now, Giants fans would be elated if just one of these guys fell to them at 5, but the idea that both will be available to them at 5 and 7 feels really crazy. I know that positional needs are scattered at the top of the draft, but most teams prioritize talent over need, unless it's an extreme situation. And it isn't like offensive linemen or dominant edge rushers ever go out of style. Now, I know Kiper is in the business of bold predictions, but man, this one really feels like a stretch. Kinda like his belief that there will be no QBs taken in the first 10 selections of the draft.
Too early for quarterbacks that are ranked in that 18 to 22 area of round 1. in terms of the ratings board and where teams are picking that could look at a quarterback like the New Orleans Saints.
I know that this isn't exactly the most highly touted batch of quarterback prospects, but it is so rare that this ever happens. There are a couple of teams in the top 10 that look primed to take a chance on either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. I mean, think about it. Carolina Panthers general manager Scott Fitterer, who has his finger on the trigger for the 6th overall pick this year, just publicly floated the idea that Carolina could be bringing a new QB into town. This will be interesting because the tackles will be the best players on the board, he said via the team's official website. But we do need a quarterback, and at some point, you have to take a shot, especially in the top 10. You hate to force it because when you force it, you could make a mistake. And the Seattle Seahawks, who just got a hold of the 9th overall pick, desperately need quarterback help as well. And think about it. I mean, no QBs in the top 10 has only happened once this millennium.
Mel, I couldn't help but notice that there is no quarterback in that top 10, and that has not been the case since 2013.
When the prospects were so bone dry that E.J. Manuel and Geno Smith were the best available options. They both had very few true believers heading into the professional level. And perhaps for good reason, considering the exploits we saw from the two of them at the NFL level. I just don't think that's the case with Pickett and Willis. The two of them seem far more NFL ready than E.J. or Geno ever did. So don't be shocked if we see a team throw caution to the wind, like they so often do, and take one of these quarterbacks in the top 10 for fear that they will spend another year in quarterback hell, even if Mel Kiper doesn't think it'll happen. Now, what's particularly strange about this declaration by Kiper is that he also seems to be extremely high on Malik Willis, going as far as to refer to him as a right-handed Michael Vick.
You saw the arm strength, you saw all the skill set that Malik Willis brings to the table. I've said he's kind of a right-handed version of Michael Vick. He's got that kind of talent.
Not only was Vick, at times, a bona fide star in the NFL, but he was also one of the most high-profile college quarterbacks of all time, and about as much of a lock to go number 1 overall as anyone has ever been. Now, this is not to diminish the run that Willis had at Liberty, but carelessly comparing the two because Willis has a rocket arm really makes no sense. To me, it's just another lazy off-base comparison that Kiper is making to generate buzz. Honestly, most of Kiper's claims are generally pretty bold, but the ones he's been making about quarterbacks this year have been really something else. In his latest mock draft, he has the Seattle Seahawks going with Charles Cross at number 9, instead of finding a much-needed replacement for Russell Wilson under center. Not only would that be a bold strategy for Seattle, Kiper really walked the line with this one, continuing to suggest that he sees Seattle trying to win now with Drew Lock, who was acquired in the Wilson trade. Win now with Drew Lock. That sounds like an oxymoron to me. The draft expert also had some fairly high praise about Desmond Ridder, the former Cincinnati quarterback who he once claimed would be the first quarterback off the board this year. Now, Kiper believes Ridder is more of a round 2 steal, but that doesn't mean he's cooled off on Ridder entirely. And this might be the boldest part of the entire take. Kiper said he would rather have Ridder in round 2 than either Pickett or Willis in the top 10, which in its totality really doesn't make any sense. You either think someone's going to be a star or not. I get the whole value pick concept, but I think at the quarterback position in particular, that is a very strange lens to evaluate talent through. It feels like Kiper often finds himself somewhere between predicting where the teams will select players and his actual opinions on the players, because he applied similar logic to his evaluation of Western Michigan's Sky Moore that he did to Ridder. I think wide receiver is going to be really interesting, Kiper said. I love Sky Moore from Western Michigan. I think he's the most underrated player in this draft at any position. So I think he's the kind of guy, you get him in the second round, and he turns out better than some of the wide receivers that go in the first round. While I'm sure more appreciates the admittedly somewhat backhanded praise, and hey, the free publicity, Kiper's analysis is a tad bit confusing, particularly because his latest mock draft has 6 wide receivers going in the first round. Last but not least, we have 2 bold statements that Kiper made about 2 guys who play positions that are generally considered to be afterthoughts in the grand scheme of the NFL draft. Penn State punter Jordan Stout and Michigan State fullback Connor Hayward. Starting with the latter, Hayward will garner a certain amount of buzz, considering his freakish athleticism, and the fact that his brother Cam Hayward has been such a beast throughout his decade-plus NFL career. But with that being said, the reality is that Hayward's draft day potential, as well as his potential in the NFL in general, is still very, very limited by his position. Fullbacks are a dying breed, and while there may be some offensive gurus out there eager to find a way to work a talent like Hayward into their offense, after all, he did line up in different positions during his time in East Lansing, I think it's very unlikely that he will be getting a lot of buzz when the draft kicks off. In reality, Hayward will likely be a day 3 pick, who will have to earn most every opportunity he gets in the professional ranks. Now, Kiper's predictions for Stout are even crazier. Jordan Stout from Penn State is my #1 punter. I wouldn't be shocked if he went in that 4th round, early day 3 area. You need a punter that's going to be big time. He can do that. 4th round for a punter. That would be the highest a punter has gone in the draft since the Jaguars selected Cal punter Brian Anger with a 70th overall pick in the 2012 draft. And while he's been a good pro, he did little to move the needle for the Jags as an organization. Which is exactly why it would be crazy for a team to take Stout that early, unless they were 100% loaded at every other position already. But which statement that Mel Kiper made about the 2022 draft class do you think is the boldest? Did we miss anything? Join us in the comments section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.